border to border, from coast to coast. Podcast by George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. Got a couple of big shows coming up here. Today, we're going to be talking about the first year anniversary, believe it or not, 1 year since the train blew up in East Palestine, Ohio, and it visited the worst man-made calamity on the American population, maybe ever. People have likened it to Chernobyl. And I have always said that I ain't going to forget it. I'm going to stay on top of it. I'm going to continue to report on it. That's what I'm doing today. And I already had the show scheduled, and a blockbuster new report came out. And I hope you saw the promo that I want to show on screen here that we did for the show. You know, it looks like it's maybe a little bit of hyperbolic type stuff, but it's not. And it is, let me go ahead and get rid of some stuff on my screen here. Okay, let me go ahead and see if I can add this to the stage. My mouse is not wanting to play yet. Okay, so there we go. East Palestine, Ohio. New bombshell. And like I said, we're not talking about hyperbole here. We're not talking about something that's hyperbolic. This is really something. Bring this up on screen here so that we can see it. And I'll get it up here big enough that I can read it. That would help a lot. And it reads Dateline, Washington, D.C. Now, this is from the Government Accountability Project. Over 1,500 pages of East Palestine dioxin-related testing is found buried on the EPA website. What? Yeah. Reads, recently our whistleblower client and independent scientist, Scott Smith, and we've had his stuff on the show before. You've seen Jamie Wallace on here citing his research. This guy went to work on the ground in East Palestine, the government be damned, and started coming up with his own studies and research and testing and finding lots of bad stuff. It discovered dioxin and related testing done by Norfolk Southern paid consultant Arcadis and involving the EPA that began on February 9th, 2023. This is really important. So the train blew up February 3rd. February 9th, this Arcadis, at the behest of the EPA, was out there doing testing. The finding this week revealed Norfolk Southern and their consultants sampled soil and water and found elevated levels of dioxin and other dangerous compounds in East Palestine as early as February 9th. Yeah, but they ain't telling us. I'm reading into this a little bit more. Despite the EPA claiming the dioxin levels on East Palestine were at first non-existent and then safe, along with other chemicals for residents. Yeah, non-existent, and then they said they were safe. These documents are evidence that Arcadis performed dioxin and other chemical testing as early as February 9th that showed concerning levels of these chemicals. By burying them in thousands of pages of responsive documents posted on the EPA website, the agency continued to deny the need to test for dioxins and these other chemicals, including air testing in homes and soil testing at homes. So it's an insult to an injury. Now, God, at first they said that there was no testing. There was. Then they said that it was safe, and it isn't. And then they used that as a means of propagandizing the rest of us. The EPA officially stated that they started dioxin testing in March, February 9th, while knowing there was dioxin testing already completed and that it had been submitted to lawmakers, scientists, and everyone else, including the public at large. The EPA has continued to tell the public that the community and their homes are safe. This is a real bombshell, folks. This is the EPA. These are the people that are in charge of protecting you and I. And they had information dating back to February 9th that it wasn't safe. And this stuff was, I think, online. It was on their site someplace, buried. And research, whistleblowers have discovered what the EPA said was not so. While refusing to test the interior of their homes for dioxins and other volatile organic chemicals, and semi-volatile organic compounds along with soil testing. Now, again, I'm not a scientist, folks. I'm just an old boy here sitting in the heartland. But the reason you want to test that stuff inside the homes, a lot of reasons. Particularly now, most of us, 99.9% of us, are in our homes more than we are anyplace else. I don't care if you're talking about work, certainly talking about the outside. You're inside of your home. Chemicals, vapors, gases, particulate matter, all this stuff, it can get trapped inside of homes and it can kill you. How do we know this? Have you ever heard of radon? Yeah, that's where radon is killing people with fatal cancers. And of course, cancer fears are one of the biggest parts of all of this and always has been. And it's in the backs of the minds of people that live there. Whistleblower client Scott Smith, now this is according to the Government Accountability Project, commented, this guy's a scientist, he's a researcher, he's not a bomb thrower. I thought this highlighting is mine. I thought this was interesting. He says, it is unfortunate. Yeah, that's the way that he says. It is unfortunate that the EPA and Norfolk Southern refused to sit down with me and exchange, in reciprocity, detailed testing information per my email to them on July 27th, 2023. Basically, he said, look, here's what I'm finding. Here's what I've got. Here's what I've found. What do you got? And would you take a look at this? They said, nah, it's safe. We don't need to do that. Despite the smear and defamation campaigns launched against me, says Scott, by the EPA and Norfolk Southern, I would still welcome the opportunity to meet with the EPA and Norfolk Southern to go over detailed testing reports in reciprocity for the benefit of the East Palestine community. So he's still saying it. He seems like a pretty good dude to me, pretty even-handed, even though he's been shunned, basically. He's been put upon, he's been discredited, he's been smeared. Maybe not by the EPA officials directly, but by others. And he's still kind of cool hand Luke with this stuff. I mean, he's still taking a very even-handed approach to this. And this is the bombshell. And it's on the anniversary. And is it connected to the fact that Biden has finally decided to come to East Palestine? It could just be one of those bizarre coincidences, but we've got some comments coming in here from folks. We'll start off with the great Suzanne Murphy here. She says it is appalling. And then here's my shotgun, Mary Knox. She rides shotgun on the show. I tell people this all the time. Love Mary Knox. Mary says they sacrificed all of the public for commerce. I guess we should not be surprised. Yeah, that kind of goes to the crux of the situation on my show and what I talk about all the time. And for this particular incident, are they too dumb or are they in on it? Well, they're in on it all the time for money. And if you had to give them the benefit of the doubt, which I don't, but if I were to try to give the government and the EPA and even Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt, I mean, why the hell hasn't that dude been out there for a year? Well, they didn't want to give extra fear, extra creed to the possible potential danger, which supposedly they didn't know whether or not it existed. But again, this latest bombshell reporting indicates that they did know. But maybe you could give them a pass on that. But I don't. And one of the biggest reasons is my background, my experience, my training is as a journalist. If you reveal, if you publish, if you put out there, hello, WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and all of the great reporters of our time, John Pilger, Seymour Hersh, Chris Hedges, all of these great people that were just get it out there, put it out there. We're all better off in daylight than we are in dark. Yeah. And here's Mary again saying, yeah, look at Times Beach, Missouri. Just look it up. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it ain't the first time. Let me go back here and see if I can get some of this off of the stage here. The article. So that's the newest reporting there. Dioxin is a combustible byproduct of the burning of vinyl chloride. Gotta love Mary Knox's Suzanne Murphy. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the thing of it is, and we're going to get into this a little bit, is why do they continue to make this stuff out of such poisonous material when there are less toxic ways of making these materials? And, hemp is a perfect example of something that can be used to make substitutes for just about every damn thing that it seems like that we make out of these petroleum quote unquote based products. That's got a hell of a lot to do with it. But let me bring this up on stage here. I want to get to this and continue through this. You're just going to get me today. I'm just going to make a spin through this. I got to get that show ready tomorrow with Scott Fuller from findjody.com, because I don't know, it kind of looks to me like there's a theory moving around out there with this Jody Huisentruth thing after all these decades, all these years, that has a lot of validity as far as I'm concerned. Okay, President Biden is to visit East Palestine 1 year after the train disaster. This is from Channel 19 out there reporting locally. A White House spokesperson confirms President Joe Biden will visit East Palestine in February. An exact date has not yet been released. Saturday, February 3rd, is the 1 year anniversary of the Norfolk Southern train derailment. Several railroad cars, as we know, were carrying the dangerous chemical vinyl chloride, and not just that, but others also. And on February 6, 2023, 5 of those cars were destroyed in a controlled explosion. The chemicals were then directed to a trench and set on fire. I hope that we have learned something, that we have awoke to this. I mean, there's got to be a better way of doing that than just dumping the chemicals in a trench and setting them on fire. That's got a lot to do with this. Now, here is the release from Biden's office. This highlighting and the annotation, the arrow and circle and stuff is mine, but every word means something. Read this closely. Read along with me. As President Biden has said from the beginning, I don't know, did he say it from the beginning? I think he was largely silent at the beginning, but it says from the beginning, the administration will continue. And that's a key word here. Again, these things come out, every word means something. They just get repeated by, and it's like subliminal propaganda or something like that. The entire objection that Jamie Ray Wallace and the activists in East Palestine, the residents that are wanting a disaster declaration and something done to help them out there, their entire bitch really is that there has not been continuing support. They believe that, particularly with the means of the U.S. government, there has been no support. But they say they're going to continue to support the people of East Palestine and other affected communities for as long as it takes, including by using every available tool to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, said a White House spokesperson. Every available tool. Really? Have you used every available tool? Have you really held Norfolk Southern's feet to the fire to do something to help these people in that community, to give them money to relocate them? I don't know. Here's Comrade Misty is Putin's buddy. Folks, this is Misty Winston. She's been on my show before. She's great on Twitter. Follow her. Here's what she says on Twitter. The fact that Biden has finally decided to schlep his way to East Palestine a whole ass year later is infuriating. He's very clearly just using those people as an election year fodder. And I hope it blows up in his face. So gross. Dude has barely even acknowledged that all year. Yeah, I'm up with that. What the hell? Where's he been? Why is it taking so long? And again, you don't have to get very deep into the conspiracy theories to wonder why he's coming out now. Maybe they knew that this stuff was going to get released. This, this bombshell, as I call it. Let's see here what Suzanne Murphy says. Gee, that would reduce profits for the large chemical companies. Can't bring hemp into production. Profits rule over human life. Yeah, I'm going to get to that here very shortly. There's a local hardware store owner there in East Palestine that's got an interesting perspective, and I've got a slide deck with that we're going to discuss. Mary Knox says they are also discovering all the firefighting foam. Yeah, that stuff is loaded with PFAS, folks. Forever chemicals that never go anywhere. I mean, you want to do some research, you want to do some R&D, find out an alternative to these foams, because, I mean, this stuff is horrible. Very high concentrations causing wildlife kills. Okay, keep the comments coming here, because I'm just on solo today, folks, so I can use all the hope that I want. Let me bring this up on stage here. Bring this down. Uh, okay, so this kind of gets to what we're talking about here. This was written by the great Jamie Ray Wallace. Now I mentioned, and she's going to come back on my show here very shortly. She's that activist resident out there in East Palestine that fled her home basically and is living in fear every day. And she says 1 year ago, a train derailment upended life in her small town. I'll spend the rest of my life worrying. Yeah, you can say you can poo-poo. Nah, if you have the specter of a horrible cancer death hanging over your head every day for the rest of your life because you happen to be in your home in East Palestine, East Palestine, you would know what she's talking about. Jamie says, I could talk about the unmet needs of residents. Again, remember, Joe Biden says they've been on top of this, really helping out, pitching in over there in East Palestine. She says unmet needs of residents who are being forced back into homes that have not undergone proper indoor air testing, forced back into their homes. Yeah, they got to live somewhere, either that or in their car or in a street or in a hotel with money that you don't have. Or the neighbors who have spent 10 months raising their children in hotels and short-term rentals because they don't want to take the kids back into these potentially poisonous environments. And particularly now, why would you trust the EPA based on what I described earlier? She says, I could describe the rainbow sheen around the creeks that shows the sediment is still highly contaminated. You've seen that sheen, that slicked on water. That's what she's talking about. I could tell you about the smell of sweet bleach that's trapped inside soft surfaces within people's home. I could tell you about formaldehyde, a byproduct of vinyl chloride, which releases other deadly chemicals when burned, being found in my brother's yard by a federal Environmental Protection Agency employee, and how the EPA agent suggested my brother's fiance show the soil test results to her specialist at Cleveland Clinics since she was experiencing skin lesions after doing yard work. My God. Jamie says, we don't hear these stories as we've decided to put economic recovery before human health. This is what Suzanne was talking about, like offering loans to local businesses instead of help to struggling families. Yeah, they're giving loans to the small businesses, but no help for the families, the people. Spending $25 million on a park. Yeah, they built a park in East Palestine instead of helping people relocate or allocating nearly $1 million to a marketing firm. Get to this. Boy, you talk about the insult to injury, folks. They gave $1 million to a marketing firm to help the region move forward. Highlighting here is mine, to help the region move forward instead of assisting the people who can't move forward because they're sick, for God's sake. Jamie says, I hope President Joe Biden will sign a major disaster declaration. That's all he needs to do. He needed to do that a long time ago. If he goes to East Palestine, the first person in line to talk with him about this will be Jamie Ray. She says, I would bring more funding and resources to East Palestine. As a taxpayer, I would want my tax dollars to go to communities like mine. Take care of us and then take Norfolk Southern to court. Give us the federal support we deserve as United States citizens. Now, this is key. The order in that she speaks of here. She wants the government, and the government's got all kinds of money. My God, trillions of. We'll get to that in a little bit. I mean, they got money literally that they can't account for. Trillions of dollars. Give some of it to those East Palestine people, and then go over and try to get it from Norfolk Southern. Don't sit on your hands and do nothing while those people are put upon and can't even get back into their homes safely because you're waiting for Norfolk Southern to do something. The stupid railroad. Government, pony up and then use all of your resources, and they are mighty to get the money back to the government from Norfolk Southern. Wrap this up now from Jamie. She says, I hope that while he's here, he meets with everyday people who are experiencing health problems or can't relocate, residents who still need environmental testing done at their homes. Mostly, I hope President Biden provides resources to East Palestine as if the lives of the people he loved depended on it. Yeah, Joe, and you hear him blubber all the time. An old man, they always get weepy and talk about their families. And he talks about his dad's ability to drive a car. And like, what the hell, dude? But I mean, yeah, Joe, you love your family. You want to get on the campaign trail and blubber about them. Well, think about the people in East Palestine if they were in your family, because that's what is at stake for us. The great Jamie Wallace, president of the United Council for the East Palestine Train Derailment. She's got an excellent page on Facebook where you can follow her and check out all of this stuff, and follow Jamie Ray there. Okay, so I've got a bunch more comments coming in that I want to get to, but I wanted to, let's see if I can find the article here that I wanted to, and it might be this one. No, that's Jamie's op-ed piece that we just read. Okay, it's this one here. This is the one. I get this. I mean, this is great. This just summarizes it. This is, and it quotes this hardware store owner in East Palestine. East Palestine business owner says Norfolk Southern should just start writing checks. This is from News 5 out of Cleveland here. This is an interesting article. Tara Morgan wrote this. Dateline, East Palestine, Ohio. People in East Palestine who are part of a federal lawsuit against Norfolk Southern say the railroad should just start writing checks. What? Just start writing checks? Yeah. Attorneys in the case have experts preparing written reports for release soon on the impact of a toxic train derailment nearly 1 year ago. Bob Figley has had a front row seat to the chaos and cleanup in East Palestine. He says, we have quite interesting, Figley says. Another kind of a low-key guy here. He's the hardware store owner. He says they were going to come in and clean up, and it was up to us who we would use for cleaning. Then all of a sudden, at the very end, they said, we're not going to use your guy. We're going to use our guy, Figley said. Well, why? Figley is part of a federal class action lawsuit against the railroad. He's got a hardware store that's hard against the tracks, folks. I mean, he's right there. Yeah, he lives about a half mile from his business and derailment site. That's where his home is. At home, he says there's still stress and tension in deciding whether to stay or leave. He says, I really don't want to move, but I don't want to die with cancer. Yeah, that's the whole point of this. Until, if and when they can provide some scientific research that's bulletproof, proving that people are not going to be cancer stricken and dying horrible deaths over this in the years to come, move us out. Do something to help us. So how do you make that? That's a tough decision. My wife does. She's very fearful, Figley said. Yeah, Figley said it's hard to tell what impact it's had on his business. Okay, I'm going to bring this up. And now this gets, again, to this issue of profitability. Norfolk Southern's fourth quarter profit falls 33% as the Ohio derailment costs grow. Now, that's from Fox 56. And you think, well, that's pretty severe. Well, we're talking about the fourth quarter only here, folks. We're talking about it falling 33% only after it visited the worst man-made disaster in American history, likened it to Chernobyl, as I spoke of. East Palestine, Ohio, Dateline. Norfolk Southern's fourth quarter profit fell 33% because of the ever-growing costs of the cleanup of last year's fiery derailment in eastern Ohio. But the railroad did deliver 3% more shipments during the quarter, and even without the costs related to that toxic crash, its profit still would have been down 14%. Well, wait a minute. So we're talking about the fourth quarter. Their profits were going to go down by 14% anyway. Remember, I started off saying 33%? Yeah, you don't have to be an expert mathematician. So really, anything attributable to Norfolk Southern might be a 19% fourth quarter decline in profitability. The Atlanta-based railroad said it earned $527 million, or $2.32 per share during the quarter. That's down from $790 million, or $3.42 per share a year earlier. Without the $150 million in additional derailment costs, Norfolk Southern would have made $677 million, or $2.83 per share. And what is all this share and price stuff, George? Remember what I told you about how these companies, these corporations that are publicly owned, are in this only for the share price. They're in it only for the shareholders. This is what is important to them only. not Jamie Ray Wallace, not the people in East Palestine. The railroad said it did receive an additional $76 million in insurance payments. What? Yeah, related to the derailment during the quarter. And it expects those policies to eventually cover most of the cost of the derailment that forced thousands of people to evacuate their homes and left residents with worries about possible long-term health effects. Norfolk Southern has now received $101 million of insurance payments. And Jamie Ray would like to have a little bit of that, folks. Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw. People in East Palestine spit on the ground when you say this guy's name, folks. He said he's proud that his team, quote, responded decisively and responsibly to the derailment to help East Palestine and make the railroad safer. Oh my God, how can this man stand up and say this kind of stuff? You got to remember here, this is pulled from information directed at shareholders. He's speaking to shareholders. He ain't talking to East Palestine residents. He says last year was historically challenging. God, how'd you like to be that hardware store owner? How'd you like to be Jamie Ray? How'd you like to be thousands of other East Palestine residents? Yeah, last year, that was historically challenging for him and his shareholders, with a major derailment to start off the year, followed by network disruptions and compounded by a stubbornly weak freight market. The Eastern Ohio incident, this guy says this, get this, is highlighting his mind. The Eastern Ohio incident tested our resolve, Shaw said. But again, I don't think he ever thought that this was going to be brought up on Podcast by George. My God, how can you say that in front of God and everybody, given the circumstances out there? His resolve and his company's resolve and his shareholders' resolve was tested by all of this. Okay. Suzanne Murphy. This is a great comment. Oh my, is he interviewing for Blinken's job or Jake Sullivan? Yeah, that's exactly right. We're talking about East Palestine. Never forget what's going on in Palestine. Never forget what's going on in Gaza. And never forget about the propagandizing that we have been subjected to. On the worst genocide the American government has been involved in since the Native Americans. And don't ever forget that either, by the way. All right, let me see what else I've got here that I can bring up on screen before we run out of time here. Some of this is, that was, don't want to bring that up. There's Jamie's op-ed piece. Go to the Philadelphia Inquirer and read that in its entirety. Because again, because of time, I just pulled these things out and read portions of them. But you can read the whole thing, and including this Fox 56 reporting. And I don't want to cast aspersions on their reporting. I think they're kind of just putting that out there. And on its face, it is so shocking and abhorrent that they kind of maybe feel that they don't have to add any editorializing to it. I mean, just read it for what it is. You don't have to go beyond what you're seeing there. Bring up a couple of more comments here on screen. That's Suzanne Murphy. She's hi, Margarita Silva. So she's just talking about somebody here that's on the show. I also want to mention that coming up here, on the big day, the extradition hearing in a couple of weeks in London with Julian Assange. I'm working on a program right now with Suzanne Murphy. It'll be kind of a joint effort collaboration between Podcast by George and the Truth Bomb activists, the people that have been on the front lines, including Suzanne, who's been in the street in this Assange incident for a long time. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. I did want to bring this up on screen here for tomorrow, because it's going to be at a special time tomorrow. It'll be at noon Central Time. We're going to be joined by Scott Fuller of FindJody.com on this story that I've highlighted several times. It's near and dear to my heart. A fellow journalist here from the heartland tragically lost Jody Huisentruit. I think there's some stuff coming out on this that kind of makes sense of a nonsensible situation, at least for me anyway. I've got a theory, a hypothesis. We're going to discuss this with Scott based on what this private detective has found up in in Mason City, says he's found anyway, and has been revealed. It kind of makes sense of the entire situation for me. That's coming up tomorrow, Saturday. I don't usually do shows on Saturday, and I don't usually do them at noon. So I wanted to bring that up. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this reporting on this bombshell revelation coming out of East Palestine, Ohio. I really think it's significant. I really think it's an important story. And I got to do this. I got to bring this out. You're going to be seeing and hearing a lot about this. If they purposely buried this stuff, the EPA, so that you couldn't find it without a whistleblower and an investigative team finding this stuff and bringing this forward, I mean, yeah, that is a big deal. And of course, Biden has announced that he's coming out to East Palestine, Ohio. And really, you could look at that very negatively, which would say he's doing it in an election year, which we are in. He's doing it for the PR benefit, which there will be. And really, all he needs to do is use an executive action for this disaster proclamation and do some other things from his office in D.C. Why is he now going out there in person? You've got to ask that question. In the meantime, all you Trumpies out there that want to say, yeah, well, Trump went out there. He went out right away. Yeah, it was kind of the same thing. He handed out water bottles and slapped a few backs, mostly his own, which is always the case with Donald Trump, and didn't do anything. He didn't have the power to do anything. He didn't make that clear. I mean, he probably could have told those people, hell, I can't do anything as far as executive action is concerned. I can't do anything legislative because I'm just a McBoob out here running for president. He does have, or he did have, lots of money, supposedly. He could have, I don't think he even contributed to a GoFundMe. And now, of course, if you've been following the legal cases with the Donald, he's got a lot less money than he used to. Here, let's bring up Rob Two Hawks here, see what he's got to say on the chat here. He says Trump would probably buy everyone Big Macs if we contribute to his campaign, which translates as helping with his court and legal fees. Yeah, you've seen related to his 91 criminal counts and his 4 indictments. Thank God. This is the hand that we've dealt ourselves, folks. This is what we've got to choose from in November. And I've been very critical of Joe Biden, and you know that, but it's because I had hoped for and wished for so much more, and shame on me for ever expecting anything different. This guy's a mad bomber. He always has been. And Captain Butt Crunch, Donald Trump, again, has a presidency. He has a legacy. I mean, look it up, what this guy did and did not do. And he's out there running again, a failed president running again on the Republican side, just swamping them. I mean, it's like they can't read the racing form of history. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you liked it, this rant by me, and it ran a lot longer than I expected it to. But if you like Podcast by George, if you like seeing rants like this, and usually I have guests on, but if you like this today, subscribe to the live streams. Now, you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, obviously, right now. So make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell on YouTube, you know, all of those crazy human tricks. And then if you just like to listen to audio, let's say you're a jogger, a bicyclist, somebody that just likes to plug in and go, and you don't want to see the live streams, you just want to hear the audio, go to podcastbygeorge.com. All the audio platforms are there, most notably iTunes and Spotify, 2 big ones. They're both at podcastbygeorge.com. Subscribe to those, and you'll not only be able to hear the podcast, you'll be notified each time one of them releases. But that's going to do it, folks. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. Let me get off. Let me take this comment off screen. Why is that still there? That's a nuisance. I'm going to be full screen when I end, folks. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.